welcome to this new episode of The DOORhof is Always Open. Now, this time we have a very special episode. During our stay in Orlando at Photoshop World, I interviewed some of my friends. And as you know, we have some pretty interesting friends like Joe McNally, David Ziser, Erik Valind, and some surprises. So it's going to be a great episode with a lot of interviews. But now I'm at Camera Nu. And Camera Nu is like, what I always say, it's like the candy store for photography in the Netherlands. They're like one of the biggest retailers in the Netherlands. And one of my friends is Brian, and he always gives one tip during our episodes of The DOORhof is Always Open. And today you have something special because you heard Joe McNally, and the first thing you said...
Joe McNally, and then I said, well, his light is always correct. And
it's
when
small
I say
flash.
correct, when I say correct, I mean color balanced correct.
Yeah.
And a lot of people use small flashes just to fill in some extra light which they are missing to get the contrast in a normal way. And if you use a small flash in a situation where you, for example, have bulb lights, then there can be a problem with the coloring of the lights. You have yellowish light, you have more bluish light. And you have to correct that. And one of the ways to correct that is with just a simple gel. And only the simple gel can make this bulb make it correct in coloring to the lights which are available there.
Yeah, I know in the past that, for example, Omnibounce, they had those little Stoffen Omnibounce units. And I remember that one time I called the distributor in the Netherlands and I said, can I have a package of the Omnibounces? And he said, which colors do you want? And I said, well, of course I want the green one, I want the gold one, and the white one. And he said, well, actually, green we never stock. And I said to him, why don't you stock the green one?
Yeah.
And he said, well, nobody uses green because gold is nice to add a color cast, and white, well, that's normal for outside. Then I explained to him, I said, do you know where the colors are for? And now for you guys who don't know it, the white one you actually use outside because the color is exactly the same and you want to make it a little bit more soft. Now, the golden one is when you shoot under tungsten light because the tungsten light bulb has a very low color temperature. And
around
to get
2500 Kelvin.
Yeah, 2000,
like
2800, in between there. So that's very reddish. So what you actually do is you add the gold reflector on your strobe, or in this case a gold-colored gel, and that way you lower the color temperature of your strobe. Now the green one, that's a little bit more tricky, but that's for fluorescent lights. Yeah. Fluorescent lights will give a very greenish cast. So when you add a green gel to your strobe, in this case a gel or the Stoffen Omnibounce, you will get a nice color balance. So the filters are from?
These ones are from Rogue. I think the Rogues are the easiest to use.
We love the guys from Rogue, right?
We love them, we love them, sure.
They're great.
The way we use it is just to have this elastic band around the flash and then put this one in between it. So it's very easy to use. It's very, very handy. And you can always bring it with you in your pocket.
And they have a lot of different colors, right?
A lot of different colors. You can see them here. A lot of different colors. They have correction gels and they also have coloring gels. For example, when you work with a black background, then you can color your background with the coloring gels. So also that's very handy.
So check them out from Rogue Expo Imaging. They have two sets, a big set and a smaller set, and they rock. So now that we talked about small flash, the first thing you think about with small flash is Joe McNally.
Yeah.
So Joe,
here we are.
Actually we already filmed the interview, but now guys, you're gonna see the interview we did with Joe McNally. Hey Joe, welcome to The DOORhof is Always Open.
How's it going, Frank? Thanks for having me here.
It's fine. We're both a little bit tired, so if we look a little bit tired, that's because we're in the middle of Photoshop World, right?
True enough. It's pretty hectic, but it's a lot of fun.
It's the best thing in the world, right?
I always, I hope I never miss one, because they're just a gas, and you get a chance not only to meet a whole bunch of new folks, but also catch up with, fellow photographers, their instructors, all that. It's almost as much social as it is, an opportunity to teach and learn.
Yeah. Now about teaching and learning, you actually pushed me into teaching small flash because I was only teaching big flash, and then I saw you at Photokina and you were like going through my portfolio and you said, why don't you teach small flash? Mm-hmm. And I started doing that. Now, when I teach, I get a lot of people because I use the light meter. And they go like, Frank, you don't need to use a light meter. I said, I think it's fundamental for understanding the system. And then they will always get this showstopper like, Joe McNally doesn't use a light meter. My answer is always, Joe doesn't use a light meter because he understands the system. If something goes wrong, he knows his whole system, like, okay, I have to add 2 stops there, because he knows that actually the camera is a reflective meter. Now, what is your opinion about that? Should people just only trust the Polaroid on the back or really learn the system?
Well, there's elements of what you need to do in all phases of the question you just asked. True enough, a handheld light meter is a lock solid, sure enough way, time honored, used handheld light meters for many years. Fact is, my default, when I'm using small flash, where I usually start with small flash is TTL. And you can't use a handheld flash meter with TTL.
Correct.
Because of the pre-flash. So I segued away from using a handheld meter. And I guess some folks would call it flying by the seat of my pants. I do pretty reasonably well, I would say, by using the tools that the camera presents to me. I feel the cameras that I use, D4, D800, have very sophisticated in-camera meters. That was not always the case. Historically, in-camera meters were pretty iffy. It demanded the use of a handheld meter, spot, incident, all of that sort of stuff. But now you have a very sophisticated meter in the camera. You also have other tools like a histogram, which I don't consult too often, but it's also nice to have, and also huge advances in the LCD technology for the back of the camera viewing. So now I can pretty well gut my way to an exposure based on, of course, 35 years of doing this as well. One of the best things that ever happened to me occurred inadvertently during one of the worst weeks of my life. My apartment in New York when I was a young photographer, I wasn't even a photographer then, was broken into for the 3rd time. I was living in a flop house on the upper west side of New York, and I lost my dad that week. When I went back to the studio at the New York Daily News, they knew I had had a tough week, and they passed the hat, and there was $500 in cash in my locker. Kind of a feel better card, sort of thing. And I bought a used M4 with a 35 millimeter lens, which I still have to this day. It had no meter in it. I had no money for a meter, so I had to go around and start guessing at what Tri-X would be. And so when you push yourself on that level, you find you do require a sensibility for the light, a feel for the light. And that certainly assists, even now in this turbocharged digital age that we're in.
Okay. Now, when you talk about the turbocharged digital age, I was looking on Facebook and I saw an image coming by, and I'm afraid of heights.
Okay.
Are you sick of life?
No.
How did that image ever occur to you? Why are you standing on the edge of the tallest building in the world and looking down?
Because it's cool.
It is cool, but Joe, come on.
And not too many people get a chance to do that. And to me, that's always been one of the wonderful gifts of photography, is that because you have a camera in your hand, you are allowed to do certain things that most folks or many folks don't get a chance to do. And that's why I always coach young students. I always say, don't think of this as a camera. Think of it as a visa. It's an entree to the world. Countries, peoples, customs, languages, the way people live, what they do, how they work, how they make a living. All that unusual stuff that makes up the entire world of human interaction, emotion, and endeavor is sort of at your feet because you have a camera in your hands.
So you just climb that building, stand on the tallest edge, look down, and go click.
Yep.
I thought you were testing some range for the new Nikon strobes to see if it would fire from a long distance.
No, this was a totally self-assigned project. I had been working on it and talking with the folks at the building for quite a while. Yes.
It was planned that you were standing there.
Yes.
Okay, because if I look at the picture, it's like he was getting a tour of the building and just saw the edge and was, you know what, I'm going to stand on the edge and look down.
No. Where I shot that from is the tallest point on the building. It's this little crow's nest type of bucket that's at the very, very tip of the antenna or the upper structure of the building. It's where the aircraft warning lights are housed. Uh-huh. So I climbed up on the railing of that, and I had gotten permission from the building to tweet a photograph from up there. And so they said, yeah, sure, go ahead, give it a try. So I made this little iPhone picture of you know, you're up there, you need sense of scale. There was nothing else to shoot, so I looked down and said, all right, well, I'll shoot my feet.
Yeah.
You know, so I shot my feet.
So it was safe.
Oh yeah, I felt very secure. I mean, you are obviously have a safety harness and you're tethered to the building. And the guys I was climbing with, you know, one of them is a level 3 safety climber. I mean, they really know their stuff. So they're not going to let you get hurt if it's within their power. What they cannot control, and they explained this to me on the way up, was that that one of the fellows, they were both raised in England, so they had these wonderful British accents, you know, and Mick looked at me and he goes, you know, Joe, you know, he gave me the whole spiel. He goes, doesn't do any good to panic up there. We don't want anybody panicking up there. He goes, because if things go badly, they go badly in a big way, because we might not be able to get you back down the ladder. So we might have to then harness you and rope you off with a helicopter. He goes, nobody wants to do that. If you panic or lose consciousness or anything like that, I said, I've done it before. I'm comfortable with heights, and I think I'm going to be all right. You guys, you know, just lead the way, and I'll come along. And they were great guys to climb with, and they did, you know, keep an eye out for everybody's safety.
And it is a huge building. We were in front of it. And the funny thing is, if you're in front of it and you try to shoot it, it's not that big. Then when you go home and you see that the little buildings next to it are actually skyscrapers, then you get a sense of scale. And then when I saw that picture, because it was a few weeks after we were there, I was like, wow.
Yep.
And I'm afraid of heights. Now, you've done so much. You've done National Geographic. You've done like every shoot ever somebody wanted to do. Do you have a wish where you say, this is a project I would love to do?
Sure. I have a number of those. I have a bucket list of projects that I'd like to get done. You know, I'm a very tenacious person, so I agitate for them periodically to the degree that I can, because, you know, you travel, you're shooting, you're busy, all those sorts of things. So projects get backburnered, but they're always there, they always loom. And sometimes I find that if I can, you know, hook on to something, you know, that will get me somewhere, I can maybe get a piece of that project done that I have been thinking about for a long time. That's why that's one of the wonderful things about teaching, because you get invited to certain places and then you start to think about it in the back of your head. Well, maybe if I go and teach at this place, which would be a good thing to do, wonderful to meet the people, but in the background I'm always thinking about, like, well, what could I get there that would be a piece of an assignment that I've given myself?
Okay. What is the most scary thing you ever did? What you looked back and that you said, oh my Joe, what was I thinking? I should have never done that. Because I think you are a pretty safe person, although it looks scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But there must be something that you did that you really regret, safety-wise.
Well, regret, I guess I can't say I palpably regret it, because I'm still here. I'm still standing, you know. So there's been stupid things I've done, for sure. Every photographer is guilty of doing stupid things. You know, I've said the wrong thing at the wrong time. I've burned a bridge. I've shot bad assignments. I've lost clients. I've done the whole mill of photographic activity, both hopefully some measure of it positive, some of it negative. That's the stuff of a career. I've been in some places in the world that are absolutely out of control, you know, and those I recall being sort of like nervous about. I mean, I was coming out of Africa at one point, and I said goodbye to my fixer, and I was in an airport in Uganda, and it was getting close to Christmas, and I said goodbye to Tom, paid him, and I had a ticket to Nairobi. And it was a ways for the flight, and I sat on kind of this broken plastic chair in the airport, and they piped in some Christmas music. And I remember thinking to myself, there's not a soul in the world now who knows where I am. And they were playing like White Christmas or something in the background, and I recall feeling very, very dumb and very lonely.
Yeah, and I think in war areas, I don't know if you know the movie Bang Bang Club. If you see those guys, that's something you can control. Of course, if you're on top of the biggest building in the world, you control it, you're in a harness. But if you're in a war area, which you also have done, you can control it. If somebody goes nuts and they start shooting, I think that's scary.
Yeah, it can be, and but I make no claims in that regard. I'm not a war photographer, never have been, never will be. There are colleagues of mine who do amazing stuff that tests the mettle, tests the courage, tests the skill that they bring to this profession literally every day. And it's astonishing the work that they do, and my hat's off to them for doing it on a regular basis.
Now, if you would have give our viewers, and our viewer range from the starting photographer to professional photographers, if you have to give one tip, like the Joe McNally, this is the tip, if you don't do this, I think it's stupid, or the tip where you go, if you do this, this will really rocket you forward.
Okay. Always use a tripod.
Always
No,
use a
I'm
tripod.
kidding. I'm kidding.
You're not the tripod kind of guy. I was
No.
thinking like, what?
I'm busting your chops. It sounds cliched and hackneyed, and you've heard it before, but I guess maybe you hear it a lot because it's true. Shoot what you love.
Yeah, passion.
Find something that you can't help but shoot, that you can't stop shooting because you think it's so damn beautiful, or it's so important, or you are so intrigued and motivated by this particular people, place, cause, area of the world, art form, whatever it may be. Keep that rolling throughout your career. Keep it as a drumbeat in the background of your assigning work, because there are many, many assignments you do that are not particularly inspirational. They are literally work. You do them for money. They keep you alive. They keep food on the table and enable you to keep going forward. And that's kind of the shoulder to the wheel aspects of this business. But the other aspect of this business, where you make that division between food for the table and food for the soul, those other kinds of things that you shoot just out of the sheer love of it, that's the food for the soul.
Okay, and the final question, and then I'll let you go.
Okay.
If you look back now over the past 10 years, what is the best improvement in photography technique-wise? So technology. Something that really changed your way of shooting. I know you're big on the small flash, so the ETTL, that's obvious, so we're gonna skip that one. But the one that really changed like your way of working. For me, for example, it's the whole stuff that we do now with the strobes that can fire on faster speed, so we can freeze the motion in models. But it's also the stuff like shooting tethered to a laptop. So what's your major breakthrough?
I think, and this may sound a little naive or maybe too general, but I think the amazing level of sophistication and technology that's getting packed into these cameras. And it's hard to put your finger on any one aspect, but I look now, in fact, I was going through a potential presentation earlier today, and I said to folks, you see this aerial view of New York City? I shot from a helicopter at night. I look back at the times that I might have tried to do something like that in the past with either transparency or color negative film. Nowhere's near the quality that I can routinely approach now. So I think the massive improvements in resolution, sophistication of meters, overall speed and responsiveness of the cameras, coupled up with, in my situation, obviously, the just huge rise in the sophistication of this system flashes, be they Canon or Nikon. I'm a Nikon user, so I work with the ITTL system or the Nikon system of speedlights. Just overall, though, that level of excellence in the engineering and the technical aspects of the camera, I find facilitates my imagination, and that's really helpful.
Okay, cool. Joe, thank you so very much.
Okay.
And I hope to see you in the Netherlands somewhere next year, maybe.
You better invite me now. Don't even think about backing off on that big guy.
Otherwise, see you in Vegas.
All right.
Thanks,
Sounds
Joe.
good. All right.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Hey David, and welcome to the video podcast. The DOORhof is always open.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
So
Happy
good
to be
to
here,
have you.
Frank.
Now we're at Photoshop World, and you teach workshops, wedding photography, right? Because you are one of the, I think, best wedding photographers out there.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
So, now during the video podcast, we always chat a little bit with photographers, fellow instructors, about what drives them in their photography, what drives them in their vision, and of course also to give some tips to our viewers. Now, how did you start doing weddings?
Well, that was before cameras were invented. No, not really. It's interesting the way I got started doing weddings was back in my high school, college days, I was a yearbook photographer. Even though a lot of people don't know this, but my background, I actually have a degree in physics and a degree in engineering. So anyway, to get through college, I was actually photographing for studios, everything. I was shooting weddings, I was shooting for myself, I was doing a lot of that stuff. So when I finally graduated, way back when, I'm not going to tell the viewers exactly how long ago that was, but I graduated and enjoyed my engineering days, engineering years, whatever. And then my friends start getting married and start calling me to photograph weddings, and one thing led to the other. Before I was doing pretty many weddings, and I had to make a decision. And I made the decision to become the full-time photographer, and one of them in Cincinnati, Ohio. So that's how I actually got started in it. I always said, too, that I wanted to offer the finest work I could possibly offer my clients within that area. And that's, I guess, the passion for excellence, I guess, was kicking at that point. So I started entering competitions and things like that. People were acknowledging that they like my photographs and stuff. So that's kind of how I got started in it. And then reputation continued to grow in the Cincinnati, Ohio area, and things are good. So.
And when did you decide to start doing the instructor stuff, like the teaching?
Well, about 3 or 4 years after I started my business, I get a call from Art Leather, which at the time was the largest album manufacturer, I guess, in the U.S. And I was winning these awards and doing this and that and everything else. They say, we want to take you on a lecture tour. Well, I'm a guy who carefully avoided public speaking all through high school and college. I think I gave one speech in front of a class during all my college days because I was petrified of it. But anyway, I kind of overcame that, and I ended up starting to lecture for them, and we did, I think we did 8 cities over 2 weeks, and I decided I kind of liked it. One thing led to the other. Somebody else heard about me, and 5 years after I was in business, I got asked to go to New Zealand to speak, and then over to England to speak. I'd only been in this business a short while. I'm already getting these gigs, so that was kind of the start of it. And I really, really enjoy it these days. I enjoy sharing what I've learned over all these years, and some insights into our success along the way too. So that's how I kind of got started at it. Started with it.
Now, what's the difference between a David Ziser wedding and, let's say, a standard Joe wedding?
Mine cost a lot more.
Yours cost a lot more. No, but if you go, for me, it's when I look at my work, I love the high contrast stuff, but I also do the other stuff. But I like to do the funky stuff, like the smoke machines, the colored gels, the high contrast images, a little bit of the vintage look. Now, every photographer has something in their arsenal that's like a signature thing that I do during a wedding or during a shoot that sets me apart from the other sides.
Right. Well, Frank, you said it. It's the signature things that set you apart. And when I go out to shoot a wedding, I'm trying to get some of those signature images. Well, I have to get those signature images in my coverage. Now, when you look at my book, Captured by the Light, you look at the images in there. And there's several signature images in that book, but that isn't what I'm going to do. I'm going to go out and photograph a wedding between myself shooting about 3,600 photographs and my assistant doing another 500 or 600 or 700 images. We're coming home with over 4,000 images that we got to edit down. Now they're edited down to about 1,500. How many of those signature images are in there? Nowhere near that many. It's mostly a photojournalistic kind of a look to what we do. But having said that, let me be clear to say that we try to separate ourselves from that photojournalistic look and how we light our images too. I mean, I've been lighting with 3 lights at weddings for most of my career. And even my clients will come up to me. I had one client not too long ago said, you know what, David, we hire you because of your lighting. That really says to me that the clients can see the difference in what we're trying to do. And even though you say I teach of wedding photography, if you look a little bit beyond the title wedding, really what I'm teaching out there is lighting and composition. And that's the kick. Even my book, the first 8 chapters, yes, I'm pointing the camera at a lot of brides and grooms, but you know what? In essence, it's all about lighting and composition.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people don't get. They don't want to buy a David Ziser book. And why not? Well, I'm not into weddings. And I always say, one of my absolute heroes, Dean Collins.
Yes. Yeah.
And I could say, well, I'm not living in the 80s, so why should I learn from a photographer that didn't use Photoshop, that didn't use a digital camera? But for me, it's universal. Seeing the light,
exactly,
strobing, or using constant light, whatever it is. If you can understand what you're doing, you can even use it for street photography, because if I walk around, and I saw James L doing that yesterday, and it blew my mind that he made it so easy. Like the same thing I teach my students: walk around, because from one side it already looked nice, then you walk to the other side and it's amazing.
Looks right.
And light works the same way if it's weddings or fashion or whatever.
Well, I think another thing too, like why are we doing things a little bit differently? There is an explosion of wedding photographers on the market these days. I mean,
Really?
yeah, you know that too. It's the same around the world. We were in Spain last November, same thing over there. I mean, there's just a huge amount of photographers out there because you know what, and I think that's fine. I think everybody's experiencing the enthusiasm for photography, not necessarily professional, but for photography. The digital cameras are easy, cheaper, fun to use, good to see the picture right away in the back of the camera, so everybody's getting turned on to that. I sure can't fault anybody for that, but what I need to do then, and I said this in 1986 on the way to a program in California, I said, what is going to be my theme of my program? And I said to myself, the theme of my program is going to be, it's the difference that makes a difference. And if I can bring that to all of my wedding photography all the time, then, and I even give this advice to other photographers, is that what you need to do in your own photographic community is establish or determine what your samenesses are. Are you shooting the same way? Are you selling the same product, whatever, same kind of customer service? You have to identify as many samenesses, all of your samenesses that you have with your photograph and within that photographic community, your community, and then change as many of those samenesses into differences. It's interesting. I was saying at my Peach Bit program today. I encounter photographers that say, well, no, they're just shooting with one flash, on-camera flash, or they bounce it off the ceiling, or they got a little fill card or something on it. It's still non-directional lighting. It's coming from the same direction as a camera lens, so what's going to happen? It's a two-dimensional lighting. You and I both know we have to get that light, those photons coming from a direction, not from the camera direction, so we create a highlight next to a shadow, next to another highlight, so we get the dimensional look in our photography. Well, anyway, so people are running and gunning with flashes. That's one thing. Then there's another group of photographers that say, I just shoot available light. That just means they're just using whatever the available light is without any regard to what the direction that light is coming in, so they can do one more thing, put a highlight next to a shadow next to a highlight. It's always about, for me, finding a light, positioning the subject or turning the subject to the light so that we can create that dimensional look in our photography. So, and I think it's kind of cool. I mean, there's so much, this blog right here, valuable blog, my blog, Digital Pro Talk. I mean, there's a lot of them out there. There's a lot of good free information out there.
Yep.
But I think, I don't know if you've noticed it, but I also noticed that there's an explosion of blogs out there too giving free information. It seems to be getting a little diluted, like where the gems are out there too.
Yeah, there's a lot of, let me put it nicely, stuff out there that isn't right.
Yeah, exactly. So, with David Hobby, you, me, Scott Kelby, so many other people out there, there's some great information out there. And if I can help somebody else take a better picture with a little insight that, I might be able to give them, good for them.
Okay, cool. Thank you so very much, David.
Oh, thank you.
And
thank you.
We'll see you again in Vegas.
See me in Vegas. Why don't you come to Budapest? September 9th through the 16th, huh?
Oh, you're there? Well,
we're actually
try
teaching.
To figure it out.
We're actually teaching a 7-week course, or a 7-day course out there, and it's going with myself and Clay Blackmore, who's a renowned photographer up in Washington D.C. So
he was with Montezucker when he was still alive, right?
He was. He actually trained with Monty. He's been on his own now for many, many years. But he's a Canon Explorer Light, and we did it in Tuscany last year. And it was great fun. We had 24 photographers take the class, plus everybody else that came along between husbands and wives and friends and everything. We had about 55 people at this great castle in Tuscany, Italy. It was a blast of a good time. So it's Budapest in the fall for us this time.
We'll put that information now down here so you can read about it and learn from one of the best wedding photographers out there and a great instructor and a good friend of us.
Oh, thank you very much, Frank.
Okay,
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, am I close enough, or should I get closer? A little closer.
Hey Jack, welcome to the DOORhof is Always Open, our video web podcast.
Terrific. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we're at Photoshop World, and at Photoshop World you teach, I teach, and I think one of the best things about Photoshop World is sharing that knowledge.
Absolutely.
Now I always ask during the video web podcast about how did you get started in teaching, because some photographers are best behind their camera and we are standing on stage with a lot of people. Now, how did you start teaching?
Oh, it happened a long time ago, about 25 years ago. I published a book from Amp Photo on illustration photography, studio photography. And I think it was one of the first books out there that really talked behind the scenes how advertising work gets done. I talked about agents and reps. I talked about working with stylists, working with models, the sets we put together. At that time, we were putting a lot of sets together, and a lot of the production part about it. And I didn't know if I could write it or not. I started writing, and as I started handing things in, the publisher said, "Keep writing."
Keep doing it.
It was a lot of fun, and I found out that I could write, and that led to a lot of writing things. I had a column in Peterson's Photographic for 4 years. I have a column with Ed Greenberg in Photoshop User magazine. I've written a lot of magazine articles, and I've written 2 other books since those when I can fit in, because it's hard to find the time to do those things. And after the first book came out, I got a lot of requests for lectures, and I did my first one at Photo Expo in New York, and it was horrible. And I learned from that, and I said I was going to get better at that. And I've just done so many at this point, it's just second nature. I mean, I enjoy teaching. It found out from the writing, which to me is a little bit like photography, it's about communication.
Yep.
It's about getting your story across, getting people to understand what it is. And the type of work I did, it was telling stories in a very straightforward way so that people could see it right away. Because you're telling the story, it's got to be there. If they don't get it, they flip the page. And the writing was a little bit like that for me. And from the writing, I got to talking in front of crowds and doing the same thing. I love teaching. It's getting the information out. I've always been the person who believes that there are no secrets in this business. That drives me crazy. When somebody doesn't quite tell you because they think there's a special sauce. I didn't invent photography. I've had a lot of people help me in my career. They're very generous. And I feel it's important to give back to the industry.
Of course.
And I've been involved in a lot of trade associations too during the years. I was a past president of PPA, Professional Photographers of America. I was on the board of directors in the early years of Advertising Photographers of America in New York, and on the board of directors of ASMP in New York. So I've been active in the community, and being high profile from all those things in the writings, I get a lot of requests. And if you can do it and you're good at it, you get more requests. If you're bad at it, they say thank you very much,
Yes,
and you don't
we'll
hear
call
from
you.
them again.
Now, if you would have to give one killer tip, the Jack tip, like this is the tip, you have to do this, and that will really get you ahead of your competition, or if you're stuck in your photography, this will get you out.
Always listen to your parents. No, eat all your vegetables. Gee, one thing. That's a good question. I never
you
thought
can do
about
two.
that. I can do two. Well, I'm a big believer that what goes around comes around. That being nice to people, and my philosophy has always been I have 2 choices in business. I can eat well or sleep well. And I've decided that sleeping well is the way I want to do my business. I've seen photographers who do business in such a way that I couldn't do it. It doesn't fit my personality. It's not my belief system. And I believe in just being fair with everybody. And you find out that when you're in this industry, it seems huge when you're getting in and massive. And once you're in it, you find out it's a very, very small community. And word gets around fast, and your reputation is critical. Your reputation in this industry is like your virginity. When you lose it, it's gone. It ain't coming back.
And you lose it really quick.
Yeah. So I think just being, a nice person, to help your photography. As far as if you're in a rut and doing stuff, go see creative things. I go to plays in New York. I'm based in New York. My wife and I go to a lot of plays.
That's cheating. Come on, Jack. If you're based in New York, I also told Jay, it's like the circus, and I think also Scott said it in his Day with Jay myself. It's like the circus comes to town, only it comes to town 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Well, it's different when you live there. When you live there, you're in like your own little place. But the great thing about New York, you go from one area of New York to another. It's like going to another city.
Yeah.
And then if you go down to Jay's place, you're going to a completely different universe.
It is.
And I try to get together with Jay about once a month for lunch, which means we get together about every 3 months, the way our schedules go. But it's a great city for to be influenced. I'll go to plays because I like to see their lighting. Their lighting is sometimes fantastic. We'll go to the museum. I mean, you can do this anywhere. Go to a museum and see the artwork and just be inspired. I mean, we're artists. We can't work in a vacuum. When you see people like Picasso, going to the Picasso Museum in Barcelona and see that he took a Dutch painter's painting, I forget what it is, but a very famous painting of a little girl looking to a mirror and it's a reflection. You see your parents in the back. He painted that picture like 50 different times from different angles, from different points of views, different things. He deconstructed it. It's not his work to say, he didn't show that. I never knew he did that because he's just doing that as an exercise. I think photographers need to do things like that. If you're in a rut and go do something fun. Just have fun. Go somewhere. Don't worry about it. Don't think about it, but just break through it. Another great thing are these conventions. I can't think of anything else now that you mention it. If I really want to be inspired and I'm a rut, I'd go to a convention. And everybody here, you see it in their eyes. They're just, they're inspired.
Everybody's pumped up. But that's also because we have the bodybuilders next month.
Yeah, next door. Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah, but I see them coming out of your program, and everybody's like, I want to take pictures.
Yeah, but that's the fun part. For me, it's the inspiration you could give to people. And when people come to you after a show and they go like, "Man, I was so stuck," and I watched your show and I want to go and shoot. That's the best feeling ever. It's the same as the first time you take a shot and you go and you look at the back of your camera and you go like, did I do this? Yeah. Now you can do it for so many other people, and that's what inspires me to teach. And of course, meeting guys like you, like Jay, like Scott Kelby. What's not to be inspired? We're hanging out with people. When I go home, I'm pumped up, I'm ready to go, and I'm inspired for 6 months. And then we have the next Photoshop World. So I'm constantly, since I joined Photoshop World, my photography really got to a next level because I was inspired. Now imagine what goes on with the attendees.
Mm-hmm. It's like discovering it all over again. I mean, photography and getting to these classes and you seeing somebody's work. I mean, although sometimes you go see, and I go see like Jay's work sometimes, and you look at it and it's like, I'm going to go home and burn my cameras. I mean, but it is. You see other people's work, and it is what it should be. Photography is a constant learning process. I don't know anybody who's been doing this for a long time, very, very well, very, very successful, who still isn't learning. And it's one of the things I really like about photography. It's the constant learning.
I also think what Jay said yesterday, and you're right about Jay, because he showed the pictures of his daughter.
Yes.
And normally it's the family pictures.
Yeah.
I looked at those pictures and I was going like, wow. Okay, that's a family picture. The next one, wow. And he said something that really struck to me, and I even wrote it down, and I normally never write something down. He said, don't fall for your own success. So if you do something and it turns out really, really well, and you earn, he said, a shitload of money with it, don't do it again. You can do it again, but make sure that you don't fall for your own success. So keep improving yourself, keep doing things differently. And he's not the youngest anymore, and I think he can look back in a very successful career.
Oh, very.
And even now, when you see his new work, it
blows you away.
Yeah, it blows me away. It's not fair.
Well, I finally thought of something that I would say for advice.
Oh, okay.
And I remembered one that I used, and it's sort of what you were talking on. And I tell people, my students, when I'm teaching, in photography, if you're not willing to make mistakes, you're not trying hard enough.
Nope.
You're in a safe zone, and that's not good photography. You have to be willing to experiment. You have to be willing to look at the back of the camera and saying, it's not so good, and improve on it.
But sometimes you look at the back of the camera and you go, that was not that, whoa.
Yeah.
This is, and now you have something new.
Oh, there's nothing more exciting to a photographer to look at something, and it just hits you. It's just wonderful. I mean, it's still exciting.
Okay, thank you so very much, Jack.
My pleasure.
We'll see you again in Vegas.
Sounds good.
Thank you so very much. Hey Joe.
How are you, Frank?
Welcome to the DOORhof is Always Open, our video web podcast.
Thank you.
Now, as I told with the other instructors, we're at Photoshop World, and that's like the place where you get inspiration, right?
Yes.
Now, during the normal video web podcast, I always say, give me one killer tip. And it always ended up like chatting. So I'm still gonna ask, give me one great tip. But first I wanna ask you something else. Now, some photographers, they like to be behind the camera.
Yes.
Some graphic designers like to be behind the Wacom tablet. I know what drives me to be on stage. But I wanna know from you, what drives you to be there on stage with all those people looking straight at you? Why?
Well, I'm usually used to people standing behind me because when I'm shooting food, there's usually a crowd, and usually the people behind me are all saying to each other, he should move it to the left. No, he should move it to the right. No, he should change the plate. And usually I have that whole crowd behind me, so having the crowd at Photoshop World doesn't bother me at all. It's actually a lot of fun. And it kind of inspires me, and I talked about that yesterday in the Art of Digital Photography, that I get inspired not only by other photographers, but by some of the students as well, because they'll come up with questions and say, I really have a problem doing this, and if I don't know the answer, I'm going to go out and find that answer and make sure that they get it. So I like to give that back, just like people gave to me when I was looking for answers when I started out.
Now, sometimes they will say that fashion photographers do a whole lot of retouching, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I go, and I don't go there often, but my son likes it, when I go to McDonald's,
Yeah.
and I look at that screen, and I
knew
see
it's
like
coming.
that juicy burger, like that nice lettuce with a little bit of water on it.
Mm-hmm.
I go like, I hate McDonald's, but man, that looks good. Then I get that little basket, I open it up, I go, this is just wrong. What's going on? Now, fashion photographers, if I would retouch like you guys do, all my models would look like men and all the male models would look like women.
Yep.
Now, do you retouch a lot, or is it
No.
all why fake it when you can create it?
We actually create the food to make it look that way before we shoot it.
Is that legal?
Yes, as long as you're using the real food, you're not faking the food. I mean, we are only using one piece of lettuce. It might just be towards the front of the burger.
And it might be a little bit less brown than the lettuce I get.
Probably a lot less brown. And we make sure that we spritz it with a little bit of water, but we don't put anything fake on the food. Everything is real.
So you don't feel guilty?
I don't feel guilty.
You shouldn't, because you make beautiful work, by the way. Did you ever, when you started out with food photography, didn't you have that same feeling that I had? Like, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to shoot McDonald's food the way it is.
No, because I actually started at Kraft, and I saw the first time they had done the mac and cheese box, and I saw the food stylist turning every single noodle so that the hole wouldn't poke out at you.
Wow.
And I thought, oh, so that's how they do it. They're using the real food. They're just forcing you to look at the spoon longer because you keep going around in circles on the noodles. So it was just more of the same way our advertising photographers, we always light on the left because your eye goes to the lightest part of the picture.
Yeah, and when you go to Arabia, you do it the other way around.
And you do it the other way around. So all we're doing is we're doing the same thing with the food. We want to get you to look at the food and keep your eye on the food and go by. So it's almost like, oh, I want some mac and cheese. I want some mac and cheese.
Yeah, that works. Especially in America. We're not used to it, but when you go here, everywhere, every advertising is about food. And the most fun part is, and now you don't do video, right?
I haven't really done that much video, no.
I've seen commercials from the fast food chains where you literally see the bun falling.
Yes.
That must be fake.
No, they use the real food.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's
I
all
go
done
to
in
the
high
wrong
speed.
restaurants.
It's all high speed photography.
Wow. Now, what cameras do you use for the food photography?
I knew you were going to ask that question. I'm still using the Fuji S5 Pro only because it's still
The
a
colors.
CCD chip. And the color is like right on the money.
There's nothing wrong with the Fuji. It's a lot of pros, by the way, still use the S5.
Yeah.
I use and I don't know if that has the sensor, the same one the new one has, the X-Trans.
No, it doesn't. It's not a CMOS chip. It's
Okay,
still
it's
a
a
CCD,
CCD.
and that's why I like it so much. It's more like the original CCD chips and more like the 2 1/4 chip.
It's got a different look. Like I shoot with medium format, as you know, and it has that same quality.
Yes.
The only thing that comes close for me is the Sony Alpha 99, because that's a totally new chip. But I know exactly what you mean, and I heard from a lot of portrait photographers, they still prefer the S5 Pro because of the natural look of the skin.
Yeah, the skin tone is like beautiful every single time.
And it's nice that you say, because a lot of people are looking at, I need 60 or 80 megapixels, I need this, I need that. And then when you look at the work of the best photographers in the world, like Mario Testino, for example, he shoots with, well, just give me a camera and I'll shoot. And sometimes it's not about the megapixels, but it's what you say about skin tone, about what color, and the megapixels aren't important.
Right.
So that's fun that you told that. Now, lighting-wise, you use constant light, strobes?
Strobes, I actually have used everything from bronze color to, I actually started out with the S-cores, which were almost, deadly to even be standing next to because they're so lethal, but used bronze color, Profoto, Speedotron. Those are the three that I mostly use.
Okay. Now, when somebody wants to start out in, let's say, food photography,
Yes.
what would be the killer tip that you would give them, except not eat all the food?
Use a food stylist.
A food stylist?
Yes. It's important they use a food stylist.
I say the same thing about the fashion.
Food photographers, they always think that, I'm going to try some food, and they try it themselves, and they spend so much time working on the food that they forget about the lighting and everything else. And as a photographer, my profession is to make the food look good photographically. So I leave it to the professional food stylist and let them create the food to look right. What we usually do is they'll give me a plate of food ahead of time, which we call dummy food. It's just kind of put on the plate, and then we'll arrange the food lighting-wise, camera angle-wise, get everything set up. And if the meat's falling or the leaves are falling or the lettuce is falling a certain way, I may switch it around so that the shadows fall towards the camera, and then put a piece of tape on the front of the plate, give that plate back to the food stylist. They have an image that I gave them of what it looks like. They know what the front of the plate looks like. They know the camera angle. Then they rebuild that plate, bring it out to the set, and then we shoot it. So I usually leave that to their hands. So a lot of people who are getting started in food photography, I highly recommend that you get a food stylist.
Cool. Now, when you have a food stylist and you start shooting food, what is your favorite food to shoot? Because, for example, for me with models, I love to do the stuff with the long dresses, the wind that gets the dresses. Somehow I love to have curves. So the dress will have a curve because of the wind. Now, I saw some images from food photographers that were amazing. You saw those, and it was mostly the how do you call it? The raw fish, sushi.
Sushi.
And with those little details. Now, are you more for the, let's take a sandwich and shoot it because it's like thick and you can work with all the layers, or are you more like, no, I want to concentrate on one little piece of food and make that look good?
Sorry.
No, don't worry.
No, actually, you're exactly right. The curves of the dress and everything, my favorite thing to shoot is desserts.
Desserts.
Yes. The problem is you like to eat the desserts just as much as you like to photograph them.
Oh my. But the desserts indeed are great because you have all those colors and those reflections and structures.
Specular highlights, a lot of whipped cream, a lot of ooey gooey types of food. That's what I really like to shoot the best.
And the whipped cream, do you change some stuff? Because some stuff, especially I think with desserts, you can't keep, of course, because you're using strobe, so you're not using hot lights. But
I actually started with hot lights a long time ago.
Okay, so how do you, let's say you have to shoot ice cream. Now some people say it's not the real food with ice cream.
No. Okay, there's a difference. If you're shooting a huge tabletop of food, and
like a buffet.
Like a big buffet, but you're not selling the ice cream, then you can use the fake ice cream.
So it's illegal if you shoot the ice cream and you don't use the actual product.
Exactly.
Okay.
So if we're photographing real ice cream, we'll actually do maybe 30, 40 scoops. We'll make all the scoops ahead of time and put them on dry ice. And then while they're sitting on dry ice, then we just put the cone, get it all set up, make sure your lighting's ready, and then you take that ice cream, put it on the cone, and then with a straw, you just kind of blow at the ice cream just till it starts to melt, and then you photograph it.
Wow.
And then pop that off and put a new one on.
But could you, for example, if it's about the ice cream, could you fake the whipped cream?
If you weren't selling the whipped cream, you could probably fake the whipped cream. But whipped cream is not that hard to shoot.
Okay.
You just have to spoon it the right way. And again, using a professional food stylist, they know how to take that spoon across the whipped cream
To get it exactly.
to get that perfect dollop, whether you want one little poof or a little 2 or 3 with a dollop going to the left or dollop going to the right.
Wow.
And sometimes you have to get a food stylist that's right-handed if you want a right-handed dollop, or a left-handed food stylist to do a left-handed dollop.
Wow. That's amazing.
So there's a lot more you have to think about before you hire that food stylist.
But we can all see that on Kelby Training, right?
I'm working on it. We've got 2 out there now, and encourage you to go look at it. We've got a lot of tips and
But after dinner.
after dinner.
Now, do you do a lot of Photoshop?
I do a lot of Photoshop on my own personal stuff, but there's not very much post-production with food. We do some. A lot of times shadow highlight on the greens will help because the greens are probably the hardest color to reproduce. But for the most part, we try to get the food to look the best that it can. A little bit of sharpening because we don't use any sharpening in the camera. I always do the sharpening on the post-production. Also, selective focus. I'll use On1 software, and there's
The focus book.
focal point
Yeah.
to do that because inevitably I'll have 3 desserts and they'll be like, I really want that front one to be sharp, and I'll get that one sharp, and the other ones will be out of focus, and they'll come back later and go, can we get them less out of focus? Well,
So you're really looking forward to the Lycra camera? How was it called? The one when you
oh
can
yes,
set
I've
the...
seen that, where you can actually set what you want to have in
Do
focus.
you think that will negatively influence photography? I'm in doubt.
no,
because it's
I
still
just-
creative.
It's still creative. I think it's more of a gimmick, but I think it's a very cool camera. I think it's really neat.
But do you shoot focus bracketing? Like if you have 3 desserts, will you first take an image? I suppose you
And
shoot
I've done
tethered,
that.
right?
I've done that, but I try to get everything sharp. I'll use a tilt shift lens so that my plane
It's straight.
it's a lot closer to the plane of the plate or the plane of the food, and I try to get everything as sharp as I can, and then do the focal point to get the actual. So if I can actually move that focal bug wherever I want it to be sharp,
Yeah, and it works awesome.
and it's fabulous.
Well, thank you so very much.
Oh, no problem.
And we'll see you again also in
All right.
Vegas.
All right, can't wait to have that next dessert.
Let's go get some cheesecake. Erik, welcome to the DOORhof is always open.
Thanks
Finally,
for having me. Yeah.
you were outrunning me
Today, this week?
Yeah.
It's been nuts.
this year.
This year.
Actually, the first time Erik and I met, this is, I think, my first Kelby training video, Freezing Motion.
yeah.
And you were then my assistant.
Uh-huh.
And I gave him a really hard time because every time I wanted to change the lights, and he was like, "No, Frank, I'm going to do it for you." And I'm like, "Okay." I was not really used to being having an assistant. When I saw your work, I was like, "Why are you an assistant?" And now we're like 2-3 years later, and look at you,
Yeah.
Kelby training instructor, doing all these crazy demos. Wrote a book with Lindsay.
Yep.
Shitty Light.
Shooting in Shitty Light with Lindsay Adler came out with Peach Pit Press out in October.
Yeah. It's an awesome book, right?
Yeah, it was a lot of. Well, it was miserable to shoot, but the
It
goal
was shitty to shoot.
It was pretty shitty. The goal is so you don't have to go through that. So we experienced all the pain for you. So yeah,
So now, what drives you as a photographer? Because nowadays you live in New York.
I do.
That's like, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, right?
That was kind of the thing. That was like the proving grounds for myself. I was from Florida originally, which is like a smaller market, and I'd spent some time in Detroit, and I was like, you know what? I'm young. I'm building my career. I'm going to go to New York, and if I make it there, I'm pretty sure I'll be able to do this for the rest of my life. So I had to prove it to myself, and I'm doing well. Been there a year and a half now.
Yeah.
So
Now, your main focus is on
people.
people.
Yeah.
So we have very common grounds,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but we're totally different.
Yeah.
Because you like to shoot.
I like to shoot natural lifestyle images, outdoors. So fun, exciting people, having a good time in an environment.
And I like to shoot stage stuff.
Yeah.
Now, the fun part was when you assisted me, you were able to transform what you like to shoot totally into my style.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I saw that, I was like, wow. Because I think that's the most hardest part, to visualize what somebody else wants and know where to put the lights. Because you actually put my lights pretty accurate where I wanted it. I only had to change it a little bit, and that's like, I always do that.
Mm-hmm.
I always wanted to have that final say in it.
The finesse. Yeah.
The finesse. Now, when you look at lights, you mostly shoot also with natural light, you shoot with shitty lights, you shoot with strobes. What's your main favorite?
My main favorite. Okay. I'd have to say natural light, honestly. I mean, as much as I use my speed lights and my strobes all the time, I'm just trying to recreate that. And so maybe not natural light, but I like to use scrim gems and big reflectors and stuff to kind of tame it, control it, and redirect it.
The Westcott stuff.
The Westcott stuff, yeah, the Westcott scrim gems. But I mean, I'll bring one light out there usually, speed lights for that matter. So I mean, like if I do need to put a punch of light in, I'll use speed lights. So if I had to say what was my favorite, speed lights, but if I can get by, I try to tame the natural light as much as possible.
Okay. Now, when you prepare a shoot, I always drive some people nuts because I never prepare. And I always have a backup plan, of course, because I know how light works. Are you the guy that will prepare a shoot, or are you the guy that will prepare a shoot in his head and just go there and we'll see what happens?
I don't sleep before a shoot, ever. Like, it's just... I'm packing and repacking, and I don't necessarily go into a shoot with lighting diagrams and knowing how I'm going to do every shot.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Of course, the packing I also do, but do you go in there with, this is the final shot I'm going to take, or are you going in there with, okay, I would love if this shot comes out, but I'm totally open for anything else?
Yeah, it's very, I guess my lighting style is reflexive. So I go onto a location, and most of the time it's outdoors or environmental, and then I kind of just light or set up the shot to best present that. Or so if the light is coming in a certain direction, then I know I might have to set up my strobes. So I like to be as prepared as possible, but I'm kind of inspired by the location to set up my lights. So never really know exactly what I'm going to get until I get there, and then it hits me.
Cool. That's the same way I work. I always have in my mind like, okay, this is going to be such a beautiful shot if we light it like this, and then you come on location. And I think the fun part is, and you saw that with the freezing action part.
Yeah, the BMX, yeah.
There were some parts that exactly came out as we wanted, and then we started fooling around and messing around, and then we got the red end stuff that wasn't that cool.
Yeah.
Oh man, it was terrible. And I think it's very important to be flexible. That's what I like about the book, Shooting in Shitty Light. Because some photographers will go out, and they will go out in, let's say, the sun. And we shot in some very, very bad situations during the filming of that. It was horrible. But some photographers will go like, oh, the light is not good, let's go home. And I think the strong part is, if you go there and the light is great, you get great images. However, if you go there and the light isn't great, it makes you an incredibly strong photographer if you go home and you have pictures that your client will actually go like, wow.
How do you walk away with that? Yeah.
The fun part is the client doesn't know that the weather is important for photography. They give you an assignment. I gave you a beautiful model. I gave you beautiful dresses. Why didn't you pull it off? Well, you wanted sunny beach images and it rained. But now the fun part is you can make that rain work for you. Like, highlight it a little bit from the back, put the model there in the rain, and your client will go like, wow, I expected sunny images, but this is way better. And I think that's the strong part, and I think that's one of your strong parts, that you really are able to get that. Now, if somebody asks you, Erik, how did you get that vision? How did you get that flexible? What is the tip that you would give to our viewers to get that same drive and that same flexibility?
It was formed out of necessity, I guess. So I grew up in Florida, and you go outdoors. I mean, it's the most beautiful locations you could ever ask for. So I didn't have access to the studio, and I didn't necessarily always have the best time of day to shoot in. So if I wanted to go make some images to build my portfolio or to go chasing clients, I mean, I had to do it with whatever environment I had. And in Florida, in the middle of the day, that's some really nasty hard light sometimes.
Beautiful hard light.
Beautiful hard light, yeah, beautiful locations. So just get out there and shoot in it. Like, don't be afraid of it. Don't, you know how you said a lot of photographers will go out and they'll be like, oh, well, the lighting's not perfect, I'm gonna go home. Don't cop out like that, you know? Try, bring in some lights, try to use some reflectors, whatever tools you have at your disposal, throw them at the situation so you learn from it, and you get images that are either better than you expected or something that you learn from. But if you go home, you learn nothing, then you get no images. So just get out there and shoot in it.
Cool. And do you use a lot of Photoshop?
I don't use a whole ton of Photoshop now. I wish I was a lot better at it. You know, that's why at Photoshop World I try to sneak into other people's classes and stuff to learn the retouching. I keep it pretty simple. I try to do it mostly in camera, and then I'll use Lightroom a ton. I'm a big Lightroom user, and then I go into Photoshop maybe for some sharpening or if I need to remove something distracting from the background. So
and
keep it pretty simple.
Light meters?
Light meters. You know what? Actually, after meeting you, I have started using a light meter. You know, I was a little resistant because we've got digital cameras, so you can chimp and get it right eventually. But seeing your workflow on it, and then actually using a light meter for a little while, I realized that for a lot of setups, it was just making me more quick efficient on set. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I could do it without. It wasn't a necessity, but it was more efficient with it. And I figured at this point in the game, you know, anything that's going to get me more time to get more photos was a good thing.
Of course, you can do it without. You can chimp, you can look on the back of the camera, but it's just faster.
Yeah,
a
way
lot of people
faster.
think it's because it's a light meter, it's weird. It's just a tool to make you faster.
Exactly.
So, Erik, thank you so very much for the interview.
Hey, thanks for
I'm
having
gonna
me
read
on.
the book Shitty Light.
Yeah.
The title is amazing.
I can't believe we got away with it, but hey.
It is actually, it's when you see the book, it's shit with a star,
yeah.
TT.
Yeah.
So-
So it's not fully the bad word, but yeah, we snuck it in.
Okay, thank you
Cool.
so
Hey,
very
thank
much.
you very much, Frank.
And have
Appreciate
a
it.
really good time in what's left of Photoshop world.
Yeah, you too. I'll see you out
Thank
there.
Okay, see you. Bye.